Well, good Thursday afternoon, everyone. I'm meteorologist Jacob Dickey. It is 1:30 right now on this Thursday, the 8th of January. And yet again, for the second time in about less than 2 weeks, in fact, we are watching the chance for severe weather. That's how this winter has just gone. The chance today is there. And so we'll spend some time talking about what we're looking for, how things may evolve, some of the threats and impacts, and some of the timing that we have here. So we'll continue to watch things as you're logging on here. I do want to make sure, because we're not limited to 3 minutes of TV time, we can take that extra time. If you have questions, let me know. Also, I love seeing where folks are checking in from. Let me know where you're watching from in the comments. And then if you can hear me fine too, that's always great, because I want to make sure that we're heard loud and clear and that folks are able to pick up things there. So that's what we've got here. And again, if you're watching this forecast, I think this is going to be valid for the rest of the afternoon into tonight. Some programming notes. Kevin will be in at 4 o'clock. He's going to have the latest forecast on First News at 4 and 5 and 6 as well during the newscast. And then I'll be heading out in the storm tracker, and we'll be watching things from the field there. My thought process is I'll be heading south and southwest, and that should send me in the direction towards Effingham to Taylorville, Shelbyville, places like that. So we're going to watch and evaluate, but I think I'm heading in that direction as opposed to west at this point. But that doesn't mean the severe weather threat isn't going elsewhere here. I think all of us watching in our viewing area have the chance for rain, thunderstorms, and potentially some severe weather there. Again, thanks for jumping on here. Lots of folks checking on in. We've got Carol checking in, and Carol's up in Colum, up in eastern Livingston County. Margaret checking in Paris, the Illinois city of love, not the French city of love. And then Karen is in Farmer City. And we'll do 2 more here. Alex checking in down in Effingham. And David saying he's in Oakwood watching and has clear volume. Again, thanks to everyone who's checking in. At the end, we'll take time to look at questions. What we'll do now is evaluate what's happening now, and then we'll look at the forecast and how things may evolve here this evening. We're in that time window where I would liken this to a fine line. The December 28th event, we were on that line and we were like, we're jumping over that. This one, maybe we're just shy, but we still have that opportunity to push across that line here based on what we're looking at. First off, our current temperatures out there in the 50s and low 60s. It's 54 in Springfield, 56 in Effingham, 61 in St. Louis and in Carbondale right now. And then 49 in Galesburg, 48 up in the Quad Cities. As we look at the wind, we'll see here the wind is out of the south and southeast. There's a lot of wind shear at the surface and aloft as well. And the wind direction, something we're keeping an eye on. If that wind is south and a little more southeast, that might help a little bit. It also is bringing in some of that instability from south of us here. We are likely to not produce a lot of that instability on our own with sunshine today. Rather, we're going to have to import that in and bring that in from areas to the south and maybe get some help from aloft to take advantage of some of the wind shear that's in place here. It's a little breezy out there. It will get stronger as we move on through. In fact, those wind gusts are a little higher than that here. It looks like our wind gusts now checking in there up to 23 in Effingham, 28 in Springfield. From here on out, those winds will continue to increase, and we'll have some breezy weather as we move on through. Dew point values, a measure of moisture in the air. Some of those more rich dew point values are still south of us. We're in the low 50s. That's a decent starting point here. We'd really like to get to 60 for severe weather potential. 59 down in Carbondale. That yellow shading are some pockets of 60-degree dew points, and so we expect that south wind to pull some of that moisture our direction. And we'll see if we get enough here. We still could keep in the upper 50s, and that may be enough for some severe weather with that. But that moisture is fuel for storms as well. Another way that we can help to see that threat perhaps pick up. Not seeing it as much as we did the 28th. The 28th, we really blew things out of the water. We got close to 70. I don't think we do that today, but we probably get those low 60s here into the evening. There's radar right now. There's been some sprinkles out there during the lunch hour as that initial batch of rain has lifted on through. We've got a break here. There's a lot of cloud cover, not much sunshine, if any, will break on through here. And then that next batch is this right here, and that's where we are seeing that. Currently, again, the rain is lifted on through. There's been no reports of thunder or lightning with the initial round in our area. That probably changes if the second batch comes on through. And looking a little weaker at this point, but that's going to be the focus of where storm development would be anticipated as that moves our direction. And moving pretty quickly our way as well here. We might get a little earlier start than our 6 p.m. estimated start time. We've been kind of saying 7 to midnight, the prime time, but as early as 4, probably going to have some rain and thunder in the area here as this moves our way. A couple of rumbles of thunder being reported west of St. Louis on I-70. Those will lift to the north and east. Might have some thunderstorm activity by 3, 4 o'clock in the Springfield area, if not a little earlier than that, and up the I-55 corridor. And then we'll watch down to the south and west to see if there's any more storm development that happens there. This is the latest risk from the Storm Prediction Center. It is only a marginal risk. The threat low, in fact, really low. That's the bottom of our scale here. But we are looking at some things that may allow us to exceed that marginal risk guidance here. In fact, the discussion that came out late this morning from the Storm Prediction Center, they said they had considered an upgrade to slight for parts of Illinois, including here in our area. The next update comes from them at 2 o'clock, and we'll see if they make that decision or not. I don't have a firm idea with this system if we actually will get that upgrade, but I don't think that changes the message here. Anytime we get these winter storm systems to line up like this one is, and we've got some spring-like temperatures, I think it's always safest to have an abundance of caution. Marginal risk, though, is for everyone. So if you're watching Pontiac, Effingham, Jacksonville, Meridosia, Danville, over towards State Line City, places like that, north, south, east, west, we are all talking about the same potential today. So this will apply for everyone here. Kind of got that 4 or 5 start time to 2 a.m., prime time, 7 p.m. to midnight. That's when I'd really just keep an ear open, keep an eye out, check our social media, check our app, keep updated. If needed, we'll be on TV as well. And Kevin and I may just do some digital coverage if severe weather isn't on the tornadic side, but we're still seeing some strong winds come through. That wind threat, probably the biggest threat for us here, 60 to 70 mile per hour gusts. And we may overperform in the wind department with this. We may still have winds for a lot of us 50, 55, but there could be some spots that are 60 to 70. And so we'll keep an eye on that as these storms move on through. We are calling for a low tornado threat. It's not zero. It's not the biggest deal ever, but it is there. And so we just have to monitor with all of that wind shear aloft. There's some things we have to watch at the surface. So I don't want to discount that. It's something we may not fully realize until those storms get closer and we see how they're interacting in the atmosphere there. So just a word of caution on that tornado risk. Low, not zero, not the worst thing ever. I don't think we're going towards an event like the 28th, but we can't rule out a tornado or two somewhere in our area. And so that maybe gives some relevance to what we're expecting here as things move on through. Let's check out Futuretrack. I'm going to show you 2 versions of it. And the thing is, they both look very similar, which is good news because that adds confidence to timing here. But there's some things that we'll be watching at the surface. Remember those thunder and lightning bolts that were showing up west of St. Louis? That's this here by 3 o'clock, rolling into Sangamon County, Jacksonville, up towards Lincoln, and even down to the south and west. That'll continue north and east. I don't really have any concern with any severe weather potential with these showers and storms here. I think they're early and they pass on by. But you can see here as we get to Bloomington, Pontiac, Watseka, Champaign, 4 or 5 p.m., they're racing off to the north and east. There'll be a break. This is where I'm more interested to see what happens. Once we get to that 5 o'clock hour, we will still watch this. But watch here as we move on through 6, 7. We start seeing some thunderstorm development here along I-55. And that's where things could get a little more interesting with that 7 p.m. till midnight time frame. And that's for most of our area, too, that those storms move on through. Again, some of them look more like broken cells. Some of them try and line up a little more. That's where that wind and maybe the isolated tornado threat picks up here. That's a view at 9 p.m. suggesting these storms are now crossing I-57. And as we get to closer to midnight then, for most of us, those storms are to the east. Still probably have some storm activity in southeast central Illinois, Effingham, Mattoon, Charleston, Paris, and points to the south. And then the exits pretty quickly and we'll be finished with that. Here's another version. It looks very similar. 7, 8 o'clock. Again, you kind of get the idea. This broken line of storms coming on through and moves it out. Here's 9, 10, and then 11, 12. Yeah, very similar in that timing, which gives me confidence that if something were to materialize, we're looking at 7 p.m. till 12 a.m. That's the consideration for us as things move on through. Here's the issue. First off, the wind energy aloft, if this was in March or April, I think this would be a pretty big deal for us here in Central Illinois. There's a lot of things that look very favorable for that. The wind profiles are really impressive. There's a lot of that wind energy, which would give us a higher severe weather threat. But what we are missing here is the instability, the energy that storms need. You can think of it as, if you're into car racing and things of that, NASCAR, they've got those high-performance engines. We've got a high-performance engine, but we have accidentally put in some watered-down fuel. in the tank here. And that's kind of what we're dealing with. There's not much energy that shows up earlier on in the game. But as we get past 7 o'clock, there may be some instability that's able to sneak on in. This is the big question mark. One, is this enough? And two, are those values able to make it as far north as some of the guidance is suggesting here? It wouldn't take much fuel to get that engine started. There's just enough that's right up to the line needed, but we still may need a little bit more. And so if we don't get that, then I think we just have rain and storms. That's going to happen. We'll have thunder. It will be windy out there. But this instability at the surface is the key, I think, to seeing if we get enough fuel to get those high-performance engines going, to get those storms rolling through our area here. Because the wind shear, again, just looking at the dynamics of this storm system, about as classic as you want for severe weather. We're missing that robust instability at the surface, and that's good news for us here. But that time frame, 7 p.m. till midnight, when we watch to see if just enough is able to move on in ahead of these storms. Latest from the Storm Prediction Center has us at a 3 out of 10 for the tornado risk, and that's about pretty much our entire area here. I don't know if this number will go up to a 4 or 5. I'm not certain on that. We'll see what the 2 p.m. update comes. I think 3 is a very appropriate number for this system. December 28th, we were at a 5. Maybe we have to add a 4 in there. We don't have a lot of confidence. That's because of that lack of instability and some uncertainty in how that evolves. That maybe keeps us from going towards a higher tornado risk number. It was pretty clear pretty quickly on the 28th. We were in the upper 60s. There was sunshine. That's why that tornado risk went to a 5. We don't have that help from the sun. Again, these storms are coming after sunset. And so that instability has to be imported. And so confidence might keep us from going up a number or two. But I think 3 is an appropriate number for us here. So it gives you an idea of what things are looking at. This is where maybe the upgrade does come, though. The damaging wind risk is still low. But I think this would be where we would see that increase, because I think the chances there for some wind gusts of 50 to 60 miles per hour and potentially higher in thunderstorms. And outside of thunderstorm activity, the winds will still be strong anyways. That wind energy can get mixed down to the ground in those storms, and we could have some pockets of wind damage really anywhere in our area. So we'll see if the 2 p.m. update bumps that up anymore. But that's probably the leading concern here. These are max wind gusts. Again, 230. You can see the wind gusts are picking up here. And as we get to 4, 5, 6, some of those wind gusts here, even outside of thunderstorm activity, over 50 miles an hour, that moves the starting line forward, right? We're not starting at 0, we're starting at 50, putting some storm activity in that, and that can sometimes get you over that 58 mile per hour marker. I think some severe thunderstorm warnings probably on the table at this point in our area. The chances there that maybe a tornado warning or 2 can slip on in. We'll see about that and see how things progress. But again, it's going to be windy. That's very important here. A lot of times we focus on that tornado threat. We have to consider the wind threat, though, as something. And then after those storms are exiting here, midnight, it's still windy. But the wind direction turns to the north and west overnight tonight into tomorrow morning. Some of those wind gusts of 40 to 50 mile an hour may linger into the morning on Friday out of the north and west. You'll see the highs on Friday are technically in the 50s. That's very early. By the time we wake up, we're probably in the 40s because that front comes through pretty early and temperatures drop through the day, what we anticipate there. Here's that system. Again, really dynamic, really impressive for this time of year. If we were in March, April, we'd probably have a fairly substantial severe weather event. Thankfully, it's January. There's factors that work against that, but we all know severe weather can and has happened in the wintertime months here. So we'll keep an eagle eye on it as this low pressure system slides on through. And then by tomorrow, it clears out. So Friday should be pretty quiet for us as far as rain, snow, storm activity. But then we got another system that sneaks in as we go into Saturday, and that may bring some rain showers, maybe a little wintry mix with it. We'll worry about that later because, of course, the focus today is on our severe weather. Here's the summary. The summary I've got, tornado threat is low. It's not 0. That often is the focus, and rightfully so. We've had our fair share of tornadoes in the last 3 years. We hope we don't start off 2026 with a bang. The chance is that, yes, we could get a couple of tornadoes to appear out of this system. That the confidence is lower on that because we need a little more instability, and that's the unknown factor in this whole setup here. The wind threat, probably the bigger deal for us, 60 to 70 mile per hour wind gusts. A lot of us will experience 50 plus mile an hour gusts. That's already noisy, right? It'll make the trees rock around a little bit, and you get those storms to move in. The starting line is ahead, so I think it'll be windy. You'll probably, at some point, be like, oh, man, that wind is really huffing and puffing and blowing there. Hail, not worried about. That's not an issue with this system. Can't rule out some very small hail here and there, but that's not going to be a problem for us. And then the flooding threat, actually calling for low. In fact, the Weather Prediction Center, this is something I saw. Let me see if I have this graphic readily available. The Weather Prediction Center actually had a flood risk. It was a very small area, and I don't think I have this graphic. This may not be the right one here. We'll see if this works. So bear with me here. Let me drop that and pull this data in. I'm doing this on the fly here. This should populate the areas. They actually have us at a low risk for some flash flooding. I think of in Champaign-Urbana last year, our biggest rainfall day was 1.3 inches, I think it was. It was the lowest daily rain total for the highest amount, if that makes sense. Basically what I'm saying is a lot of us know it's been dry. So that's the case here. We would love to start with some rain, and I think a lot of us would, but that's kind of the idea that we got. So let me drop that. I don't want to focus too much on that. But again, there may be some efficient rainfall producers, which will take typically December, January, the driest time of the year. We do think in the future months ahead, second half of January into February, March, probably going to have the rain finally return. It's been very dry around here. In fact, down at our sister station in Terre Haute, I didn't realize this. For Terre Haute, Jesse Walker shared a fact. The last 6 years for them have all been below normal with rainfall. So, a lot of dry areas here across the Midwest. And that drought has just been hanging in there like a hair in a biscuit. So the more rain we can get, the better. And I don't think we're going to get enough where it's, 6 inches at once, but we get an inch out of this. I think that's a big win for us here. We do have, though, the chance for some of that severe weather to mix on in. That's my update here. It's 1:46. Again, the next update from the Storm Prediction Center actually comes out at 2. They did have a radar outage. I saw a question about that. Their radar went offline yesterday. They had some equipment malfunction. They were working to get that solved. And somebody has commented and said they see the radar that's back on their app. So that's good. We were a little bit like, ooh, what happens here with that? They had a radar technician come in and take care of that. So we'll be able to see these storms with radar. I'll be in the storm tracker as well with updates. Kevin will be in here. We'll have some help behind the scenes from Adam and or Seth, and keep you updated as these storms move on through. In summary, I hope you get the gist of what I'm saying. I think it boils down to this single statement that I have maybe said too much. And some of you, as I say it, will be like, oh, yeah, I've heard that before. Never trust a winter storm system with spring temperatures. And I don't trust it. There's a chance we scrape through, just get some rain, some pockets of wind. I think we'll at least have some severe thunderstorm warnings. We'll probably have some pockets of 60-plus mile-per-hour winds here and there. The unknown factor relies on more instability to get that tornado risk to appear a little bit more. It's still a low risk. I'm not seeing much right now that is showing that instability is going to exceed what's forecast, but it's just something we have to watch here. There's a number of ways that we can get that instability. Sunshine's one of them, and I don't think we have a lot today to help out. That's good news. But again, we're bringing the instability and importing it in from the south of us here and drawing it north as that low pressure system passes on by. That's my update here. I'm going to look through and see if there's any comments, anything like that. And we'll just throw in the graphic. In fact, I'll put up the SVC outlook just to see if sometimes they'll update it a little earlier. I haven't seen that at all. Maybe I'll be able to peek right here. Looks like they have, actually they did update it. Okay. So their update brings no changes to the area for us. So we're still in a marginal. Their wording is another location of interest for this evening will be across portions of Illinois. Across south central Illinois, some better overlap of weak surface-based instability beneath the low-level jet may occur later this evening. So they are watching that. It's kind of an area of interest, and that's why I'm probably heading south to Taterville, Effingham, Shelbyville, somewhere that direction. Because if you get just enough of that surface-based instability, that fuel for the engine, maybe that engine can kick on and roar to life. And if that's the case, then we will be there and keep an eye on that. So back to questions. That's what we were doing. Sometimes there's questions, sometimes there's not. So yeah, that means the tornado risk also a 3 out of 10, and that will stay that way. I think they do another evening update. That update though doesn't happen until 6 o'clock. By that time, we're in with storms, so we'll see what happens. But that is kind of how things go. They do updates at a set schedule. Of course, weather conditions are constantly changing. But their way to say, maybe things are performing a little bit more. Suddenly, if we get a watch that's issued, that might be a sign. We may very well not have a weather watch where these storms come through as well. That is something that can and has happened before. Sometimes if the confidence isn't there, the likelihood of storms is severe weather is not high and there's only 1 or 2 problem spots. Maybe you don't get a watch in your area, but you could still have a warning. Oftentimes when there's events where we expect more numerous storm reports, more numerous severe weather storms, that's when you see those watches get issued. Jeffrey brings a great question. Can we just have the rain showers and forget about the rest? I don't disagree with you. And we're going to get rain. Most all of us will have rain and some thunder. A lot of us probably have some blustery winds. Some of us will have some severe winds. A few of us may have some pretty intense storms, and 1 or 2 of us may have the chance for a tornado, if that makes sense, kind of looking at the evaluation of things. Janet's saying, do not like when storms come at night. At least we're not talking, 8 p.m. to 4 a.m. By midnight. In fact, earlier than midnight for a lot of us, those storms are on their way out. But the evening storms aren't the greatest. That's something to consider. David asking about the barometric pressure. Is it going to increase? We're seeing it drop. As that low pressure system passes by and the front moves in, the barometric pressure will drop. Following the passage of the front, though, that's when those pressure values can rise a little bit. So it'll probably be a pretty steep drop. The low pressure is pretty strong, and so that's why the wind is going to be a little stronger with this here just outside of thunderstorm activity. We're pulling in a lot of that air towards that strong low pressure system. It's kind of like if you look at a high pressure is a mountain, a low pressure is a valley. That distance between the two, if they get closer together, the slope is a lot steeper. Well, that's what we're dealing with. Is the mountain and the valley are really close to each other here. Sometimes you have it where they're spread out. You can see the levels between my hands here. That's a much shallower slope, lighter winds. If you have a tighter gradient or a deeper low, and that's what we have now, that's a much steeper slope, and therefore we have stronger winds. Hope that makes sense. Heather again saying it looks like the weather station's back online. Yeah, the radar over there, they had to get an update and do that. I don't like the word hype with this, Brandon, but I know what you're trying to say. I'm not here saying we're going to have crazy tornadoes and we're going to have, that to me is more of hype. And there's sometimes a lot of hype on social media. To me, it's more of a word of caution, right? Let's think of it this way. If you've got a space heater in your house, space heaters are responsible for a lot of fires in the wintertime, right? We're cautious and aware that those space heaters can cause fires. A lot of times they don't, but sometimes they do, and they can be bad. And that's kind of where we sit in this situation, if that makes sense, right? There's a space heater. There's a blanket close by. That blanket's getting a little warm. Will it catch fire? We'll see. If it does, we're here, right? We're here to watch and see if that happens. We just know that risk is there, and it's also in a time of year where people don't expect that. So I always try and stay away from hype. I'm a straight shooter. I like to just say it how it is, and there's some uncertainty that lends questions to how that threat evolves. But yeah, I think it's definitely worthy of just being a little more cautious and keeping an ear open and an eye out, right? Nothing's on fire yet. But if something is, we're ready and we know what to do and we're not caught off guard, right? You got smoke detectors to keep that. You've got your weather team here at WCIA 3 to keep you updated for storm threats, if that makes sense. Clay County, Florida, you're in with that as well. That risk is same down in Southern Illinois. You might be in the slightly better I-70 in South here. Probably this area, maybe to me, slightly favors it a little bit more. But the wind threat probably is area-wide here, so I wouldn't rule that out with that. And then Billy saying, severe weather is definitely like having a hair in a biscuit. Yeah, that's no fun. Nobody likes that. Gross, right? Okay, that is what we've got here. And again, if you're watching now, it's 1:54. We started this at 1:30. This is going to be valid for the rest of the afternoon into tonight. I'll be packing up the storm tracker and heading out here in a bit. And then Kevin will be in for the news at 4. We will keep you updated, and we will keep an eye on the sky. And I think you just keep an ear open, right? We're aware of it. We know there's a chance. We hope there's not. The odds probably favor that there's not here. But we've got a few things that just make us a little cautious, a little suspicious, right? I'm always suspicious what the storm system could do. So, and it's January, right? If this was May, it'd be like, oh, yep, another chance for severe weather. Whoop-de-doo. Happens 6, 8, 10 times in May. It's January. It's supposed to be snowy. It's supposed to be cold. It's supposed to be winter, but that's not the case for us here today. Thanks for watching, and you'll see the next update from Chief Meteorologist Kevin Leidy on TV during First News at 4 p.m. on Channel 3, and we'll keep